Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with a Total War Warhammer video. Today's topic are the missing units, heroes, lords and legendary characters for the Dwarfs, so without further ado, let's begin. The Dwarfs have one of the most complete army rosters by their 8th edition army book standard. In truth, the whole race has translated rather well into the Total War Warhammer series. But that being said, there's still a few missing units, lords and heroes, so let's start to check them out. First we have the Funthe Barge, a lighter than air warship. Created by the famed dwarf engineers, the Funthe Barges are zeppelins that carry immense amounts of firepower atop of them. Enemies are normally caught unprepared as a hailstorm of bullets rain from the sky. There are very few known Funthe Barges in the Warhammer world, and if it ever gets implemented into the Total War Warhammer series, I'm imagining that there'll be some sort of unit cap, as it would be quite overpowered in the game as it was extremely overpowered in the tabletop. Next we'll look at two units simultaneously, the Rune Golems and the Rune Guardians, both of which are constructs available to the Dwarfs. The Golems are made of stone and the Guardians are made of metal. Both types of constructs are given life by the power of dwarf and rune magic. They are said to be around ogre sized, but it could be possible that we could get even larger variants too. As neither are living beings, both should be implemented as unbreakable units. They should be fairly decent in melee combat, though rather slow, but have a very large health pool and a very large amount of armor, which would make them perfect to be able to hold enemy lines. Next up we have the Doomseekers, another type of variant for the Slayers. They are considered crazed, even by Slayer standards, where they march into battle with whirling blades of death. These should be considered extremely potent anti-infantry units, and seeing as they're also Slayers, they would also be unbreakable, meaning that these units would fight into their last dying breath. An extra type of Slayer unit would be quite welcome, especially to be able to make a Slayer army quite viable. Next we have the Goblin Hewer, another Slayer specific unit, but a war machine this time. It could be possible that the Goblin Hewer could be turned into two different variants. The first one would be a basic standard melee war machine, decently fast and incredibly well armoured. The melee variant of the Goblin Hewer would use its whirling axes as an anti-infantry and anti-armour unit, where the second variant would be a short to mid-ranged version, where instead of relying on close combat, it would be throwing axes at its enemy from a distance. Obviously, it would still be fairly decent at melee combat too, and considering that both variants would be manned by Slayer crew, the war machines and their crew should both be considered unbreakable. And lastly, in terms of units, we have the Dwarf Steam Drill, which is the dwarf on the right of this image. In the tabletop, the Steam Drill itself is an upgrade for champions of the minor unit. However, it could be possible that in Total War Warhammer, these could be translated into a different sense and possibly created as its own individual unit in a very similar sense to how the Skaven weapons teams work. Steam Drills could function as early siege attackers, allowing you to attack walled cities early in game without having to build any battering rams or siege towers. They should also be quite fast at taking down enemy gates, allowing for your troops to get inside the walled settlements quite quickly. But with that, we've checked out all the possible remaining units for the Dwarfs, but now let's start looking towards the lords and heroes. Firstly, the Dwarfs need a Slayer generic Lord and Hero choice, nothing too special, and it could be done as an easy reskin, as like most of these units that have already been covered in this list, but it's just something that makes sense here, especially when players want to field pure Slayer armies. Seeing as many Slayer characters have a variety of different axes, it could be possible that each character would be able to switch between weapons before battles, instead of having a bunch of different variants such as a Lord with 2 axes, a Lord with a great axe, and so on. Next would be a Brewmaster hero. You see, the Dwarfs really like their alcohol. It is a staple of their culture, and it could be that we could see a hero themed around that, where the Brewmaster itself would act as a buff-based hero. It should be fairly decent in melee combat, but it should be focused around buffing your units in different ways, such as giving them extra leadership, immune to psychology, immune to fear, and so on. These would be temporary buffs that could be used in the battlefield. Now, before we moved on to the missing named characters, there is one mount option that is currently missing from the Dwarf roster: the Shieldbearers. Right, so the Shieldbearers are an interesting mount option. It is known on occasion that dwarves ride onto battle atop of a shield carried by fellow clansmen. Shieldbearers were a rather iconic mount option in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, and it just really makes no sense that it's still not here. The purpose of the Shieldbearers was to increase the hit points of the Lord itself, and to increase their armor quite dramatically, making them extremely viable tank options. Not only that, but I mean, look at the model, it looks rather cool, doesn't it? But with that, we've looked at the only mount option still not available for the Dwarfs in Total War Warhammer. Now let's start looking towards the missing named characters, with the first being Manaka. Manaka is a rather interesting character. mainly because he is a dwarf slayer engineer. There are famous inventions created directly by him, such as the Goblin Hue itself or the Spirit of Grungi, which is another Funthe Barge, but what really sets him apart from other dwarf characters is not just because he's a slayer, but he's a slayer who's rather competent with range weapons, something that is not really heard of within dwarf lore. In case you aren't too familiar with Slayer lore, it is the job of the Slayer to seek glorious death in battle, which is most usually achieved within melee combat. Manaka himself is known to fight in melee combat, but he also has an interest in ranged warfare too, which sort of lowers his chances to seek the glorious death that all Slayers seek. And given the recent history with some of his failed inventions, it could be that one of those will kill him before something else gets to him first. Next, we look towards Forek Ironbrow, the Master Rune Lord of Karak-Azul. Forek is known to be one of the most prolific rune lords to have ever lived. He has had many students, all of which who describe him in the same way, a true traditionalist dwarf. He does not care much for new inventions, but rather keep as close to the old ways as possible. It is said that Forek is always constantly at work, but he will join the battlefield should he be needed, where he is always seen atop his Anvil of Doom. Forek longs to reclaim the Dwarf Empire of old, but he is also on a personal quest, where he seeks long-lost relics of ancient days. And for this reason, he has been seen active within many clans known throughout the Warhammer world. Next is King Cazador, the legendary king of Karak-Azul. Cazador is known to be large and very strong, even by dwarf standards, where his famed reputation has attracted many greenskins from across the Badlands to seek him out as a challenge. Cazador hates greenskins more so than any dwarf could, for the famed war boss Gorfang Rotgut killed his only child and enslaves many of his people within Black Crag. Many claim that Cazador will not rest until his people have been freed and Gorfang has finally been brought to justice in the name of his son. Next we have Grim Burleson, an extremely young but very talented master engineer. Young as he may be, Grim has already shown much promise within the Engineers Guild. Being highly influenced by that of his father, he created an impressive double-barreled rifle known as Grudge Raker, which was known to be able to kill over half a dozen greenskins with a single shot. Grim prefers the trial and error method in relation to many of his inventions rather than precision tuning, which itself is very common within the Engineers Guild, much to the ire of his fellow guildmates. However, it would seem that his methods are very effective, and it could be said that his fellow guildmates are simply jealous. And now lastly we have Joseph Bugman, possibly the most famous dwarf in this list, mainly because despite the end times and the destruction of the Warhammer fantasy world, Joseph Bugman lives on in our own real world, having a bar named after him in Warhammer world itself. Joseph was not a warrior. Instead, he was a legendary brewmaster. He was known for his many alcoholic beverages, many of which were served directly to the likes of the Emperor of Man and the High King of the Dwarves himself. He would have lived a happy life brewing his alcohols, were it not for a particularly, suicidal goblin known as Git Guzzler, who destroyed his brewery. Since then, Joseph Bugman has set himself off on a rather ambitious quest to seek the complete and total annihilation of orcs, goblins and hobgoblins from the Warhammer fantasy world. And while that is a near impossible task, many greenskins have died under his name. But with that, I believe that these are the missing lords, heroes and units from the dwarf roster that are likely to make it into the Total War Warhammer universe. Are there any that I've missed? Let me know in the comments below and let me know what type of role they would fulfill in the game. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below, we have various different social media links such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team, talk to us about Total War, Warhammer or just anything really. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could get loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing using this link and also using our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to our patrons Gibraltar LUSC and Ryan Bertsche for subscribing to us at our fame level. Honestly, you guys are super cool. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, the channel's been growing a lot lately and it's all thanks to you guys. Without you, the Great Book would be nothing. We're trying to implement more videos into the channel soon, but we're getting stuff done outside of YouTube at the moment, just like artwork and so on for the channel. It's just taking a little while to get everything to look to a standard that we feel is cool. Honestly guys, thank you so much for all the support lately, it's been amazing. But with that my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.